How's it going? And welcome out to our Jitterbit Tech Talk. My name is Jared Stone,
And I am Corey Willis.
and we are really thankful for each of you taking the time out of your extremely busy schedules and days to come and meet with us and spend a few moments and learn about Jitterbit. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and a really exciting thing that recently happened, Corey, was Dreamforce, right?
Yeah, so we didn't do our tech talk this last month.
Yep.
Because of Dreamforce. We were out there, and myself, I was out there. Jared didn't get to make it this year, but Micah was out there with us, who was on one of our previous tech talks. And I will say it was really a nice thing getting to see some of you guys actually come up and introduce yourselves and getting to put a face with the names that we just see pop up on the screen. So shout out to all those that were able to make it out there.
Exactly. Another thing that we could talk about really quickly before we get into today's topic is some product updates. A lot of cool stuff, a lot of nice things going on within the world of Jitterbit and integration. But one of the things that we have here is private API gateway and Docker agent.
Yeah. So since our last tech talk, I think we've had 2 or 3 releases. 9.4 just came out. We had 9.2, 9.3, now 9.4. And some of the things, private API gateway, that's huge for some people that are using APIs because we've got the API platform. It's a wonderful platform, but being able to take those APIs and put them on your own local network with custom URLs, just different things like that. There's a lot of flexibility there for a lot of people. If you haven't checked it out, we're not going to go in depth in this, but just want to let you know it's there. If you haven't heard about it, check out the release notes. And you said also the Docker agent.
Exactly.
So now the agents have been packaged up into Docker containers, and so you can go out and use that as well.
Yeah, no, really good stuff there. And like Corey mentioned, we're not going too in depth here, but you can always check out release notes, go to Success Central to see all that information, Management Console to get to the release notes as well. Another thing that we have that recently came out in regards to API proxy.
Well, so not yet. That's an upcoming. But yeah, API proxy. So this one's really exciting because we've got some customers out there that they look at the API platform and they go, I love this. How can I do this for my existing APIs? And today, you can do that, but you have to go into the studio and you have to kind of create an integration basically to proxy it there. And we're simplifying that to where in an upcoming release, you're going to see it within probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, I think is what I'm being told.
Okay.
But that's going to be coming out. So if you've got existing APIs that you want to standardize and just use the Harmony platform as a proxy, that feature is coming very soon. So just want to give you a little, what's coming on that.
Sure. And I guess that kind of segues us nice into this next little conversation on product updates around the API Classic.
Yeah. So, we had the API platform out there within the Web Management Console. And, since then, we've released the full API Manager. And that's the new interface. If you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you now, over the next few weeks, go out and be looking at that, because in an upcoming release this year, I don't know the exact date or time frame yet, but it's going to be this year, the classic API Manager interface within the Management Console, that is going to be deprecated out in the near future. So just something for you to be aware of so you're not caught off guard if you're using that and you haven't checked out. Now the APIs, it's the same APIs. You're not losing your APIs. It's just the user interface. But I know I don't like it when change is forced on me. I like having that dual approach where I can go check it out. That's what this is about. So if you haven't checked out the new API Manager, take some time, go out there and give it a glance and see what it's all about, because that's going to be the way of the future.
Exactly. Yeah, and a nice transition there from old to new. So
I think we got one more, right?
Really, one more. Yep, we have NetSuite token-based authentication.
Yeah, so if you're using NetSuite, we have recently released out the ability to switch over from the SSO to the token-based auth. Again, if you're using that and that makes that means something to you, go out, check it out, look into the details. Again, not necessarily the topic of this tech talk. Just want you to know about these highlight bullet points of some things that have come out since our last tech talk.
Sure. Yeah, so, like Corey mentioned, and I mentioned a little earlier, for the latest and greatest updates on release notes, things like we just talked about, Success Central and Management Console is a good place to go and look at those things. Well, today we're going to be talking some about best practices around orchestrating complex business processes and some things around error handling, how to do that in a graceful way.
Yeah, so some of this, there's really there's really kind of 2 high-level approaches to designing integration projects within Jitterbit. And the one that most people are familiar with is kind of what we would call a flow-based approach. And in a flow-based approach, you design it out in the studio, you've got the on-success operations, you've got your failure chains, yeah, but everything's based on success. And it's like, I'm going to go into system A and extract this data, and then I'm going to move that into a secondary operation, put that into another system, and you have this entire flow built out. And that really does work pretty well for more simple integration scenarios. But when you do get into the more complex scenarios, there is an alternative approach, and that's what we want to get into today. And this would be more of an endpoint-based approach. It creates things in a very reusable fashion to where you can say, okay, I just need to put this account extract in here, and you just kind of drop that in as necessary. It does take a little bit more on the scripting side. And so this is something that is a little more technical, but we're on a tech talk, right?
Sure,
on a tech talk, we talk tech. And so we're going to dive into it. But for this, we have something new and bringing on a special remote guest, right, Jared?
Exactly. So what we've done, last Tech Talk, we had Mike as our special guest, which he is our producer today. But today we have our integration architect all the way from Sweden, George Jeffcock. So he's got a ton of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge there to really share with us all and kind of help us along with this topic.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and welcome to the program, George Jeffcock, all the way from Sweden. So George, we've got you on screen here. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. It's good evening here. It's just gone 5. I'm an integration architect at Jitterbit, and I'd love to share some of my experiences from the last 18 months. And hopefully it'll be useful. I'll dive straight in if that's all right.
Yeah, now you say 18 months, but that's 18 months direct with Jitterbit, but you've got an entire career of integration experience behind you, right?
20 years software engineering and some of our competitors' tools I've done. But yeah, it's a good grounding, and I joined Jitterbit because of its low code. I'm a low code advocate. I really believe in that and not traditional IT with 3GL programming. Low code is the way. We're here to service business, and Jitterbit fits that bill.
Awesome. So you've got a few things prepared to show us. So we're going to go ahead and bring up your screen share here that you're sharing all the way from Sweden. We're going to bring that up on screen. And let's see, there we go. So we're seeing your screen now, George.
Okay, cool. Well, this is at Jitterbit, we're doing some more technical enablement workshops, and so this is part of it. We did this one earlier this month for some of our customers in London, and this will be downloadable from where we'll find the Tech Talk links later on. But I want to zoom straight to point 6. And as the guys have said, I'm going to concentrate on this. Script operations when they start processes. Now, this isn't something out of the ordinary. I put a link here. It should open up. We'll do a link later. That goes to an example on our website of this. So it's not something I've dreamt up. There we go. So a different example shows scripting. And so this is how we do a script control, to marshal, to give order to when we're calling multiple operations. And so it's not a wrong way if you haven't done this way. It's not the right way. It's just a way, a method of calling. So a lot of people are familiar with this example. And you have an on success path. And this is not to say it's not correct. It's just to give you another arrow in your quiver to be able to solve your integration needs. So if we go back, I wanted to show you highlight a few things how, let's say, if we did it on success, I've done some operations here. If we run this operation, let's have a look at it first, actually. It's an on success, and it's in these scripts, it sleeps for a second, that's all. And on here, it raises an error. So very simple. Here's the second one with the exact same process, but we're not on success, with a script at the top. So some may feel that you get the same results, but let's run them both. Do that one first. And the second one should see them coming up here soon. So the first one, which had the on success, look at here, it actually, does it report error? No, it reports a warning. But that's not a bug. It says it's child, which this is as a warning. But then this one here didn't report an error. So it called this on the on success, but it didn't report an error, it reported a warning. Now, that's not wrong, but some people might want more control on this. So if we look at the second one that we ran, that it's just controlled by this central script. So I call it a marshaller or a controller or an orchestrator. It's just saying, Jitterbit is a procedural language. Call this one, invoke this one, go back, focus to here in the script so that I can do something, and then back out, control, focus to here. Whereas this one, slightly different, focuses on here, calls this one, and then calls this one. So the top script, the parent operation, never really knows about this. So if we now look at the difference, arguably that's more control. This has raised an error, it's the same as this one. This was successful. It did run without error, but its child did, but the parent returned the error, saw it. So that would turn up in your operation log and be able to see, yeah, buried underneath a child errored. So that's horses for courses, but I like to do it that way. But that's a bit of an overview of the subtle differences. Basically, this is very useful, this on success, for modeling what we call the happy path. And so sometimes in integrations, you have to plan for the worst. And so this is giving you more control for graceful error handling. So let's actually now build one out a bit.
So George, while you're doing that, one of the things here, and let's just kind of back up for just a second and go ahead and continue. But in the secondary approach, you have that controller script, the marshaller. And within that script, the primary function, the Jitterbit function that you're using is run operation, correct?
Correct, yes.
And with run operation, this allows us to do various things. We can run them synchronously or asynchronously. In this case, you're running them synchronously, the default, where this script is essentially going to wait. And what that does is that gives you the ability to wait for that error message, right?
Correct. Procedurally, it goes one after the other. So if you had a counter, if you had some status fields in here, it can wait and check for it. So if you want to look up some important words on the internet, look up graceful error handling. It allows you to tackle the worst case scenario. It allows you to continue to stop, basically with flags, to say, do I want to continue? So I'll actually show that a bit in this, I'll show this that now. So script pad F4, my favorite. Here is a very simple web service. It's a SOAP, we're all familiar with it. We're going to send in Celsius, and it's going to convert it to Fahrenheit, and a little error if it comes back nothing. So, but these little black boxes, when you're beginning Jitterbit, you don't know what's behind it, what flags are behind it. So I often recommend, say, run it in ScriptPad. ScriptPad is the same as running it in the script. It allows you, if we go back to our help text, I think I closed it. If we go back to our presentation, I say graceful error handling. It allows graceful error handling, but it also allows you to flow test and debug. It's one of the things that I find some Jitterbit users don't even know exists, and it's so powerful. Let's look at run operation. That's what Corey was talking about. Run operation is another nice thing. Yeah, okay, collect. I've got next button here. I can choose to go run immediately or place operation on a queue. So that was what Corey was talking about. Or I can raise an error, finish. I've shown integration architects this, and they go, how did you do that? That's just this beautiful setting here. I always have it on business analyst because some of these things are supported by wizards. So a lot of the guys in the States who are my integration colleagues didn't know this existed. So that allowed me to see, wow, that's how you do this. That's how you do an exclamation mark. Oh, that's the negative. So it's a good way of learning. So that's a quick tip, is keep that business analyst on. So
yeah, so in that script, if you can step back to that for just a moment,
I will.
Inside that script, what the wizard has created is this raise error function that has nested within it the get last error function. Yep. And this audience, this is how George is able to bubble up this error all the way up to that parent controller script to say, okay, if this secondary operation fails, if it reports an error message, well, let's bubble that all the way back up to the top so the entire process fails. One of the things that I get asked often, particularly when I'm at events like Dreamforce, for instance, is I'm asked, how is it that you could orchestrate something that's going to be able to, say, do rollbacks? And that's a much deeper topic than what we necessarily have time to get into today. But you really can't do it without using this approach. With using this approach, it gives you the foundation to be able to build things out like a rollback process.
I couldn't agree more. It gives you the flexibility in the future to allow yourself to do that. I'll show you another program here that we're working on, and I'll show you exactly that, is the scripting, the script operation beforehand. If we can consume a REST service, any REST service, this is monitoring, for example, Harmony API. There's my script orchestrator, but I've got a script before this. It allows me to do pagination. Request, put, response. The only way I was able to do that, the flexibility was given me, was having a script before to do pagination, or retries. Anything that you have to do not out of the box. So exactly like you were talking about the transaction rollbacks. This could be databases. So inside here you can control it, which brings me neatly on to say control. How do we know what flags exist? And that was what I found was very useful here. If we run operation, let's run our little web service that goes and gets the temperature. Enter. Finish. Just do it like that. If we run it, debug. Not very exciting, but we have tested it, but it hasn't given me anything. If we do this with debug on, have a play. And what I'm showing you now is I'm going to try and build this script. Don't write reams and reams and reams of script, because like in any language, you have to test it by increments. So now if we run this, hopefully you'll see something interesting on a few fronts. I've done a bug. Yeah.
The notorious missing semicolon.
Yeah, which is gone soon, hopefully. Here you go. So it stopped there. Nice. It's going to run the operation. Well, what happens in the background? As a beginner, you have no idea. This is what allowed me to jump to the next level. Wow, what is that? 200. I can, as Corey actually said, I can code on that. I can say if equal 200, continue. If, don't do it. And what are these lovely things? So these are the internal workings. These are your Jitterbit variables that are available to you to test at runtime. But only by doing this did I find that they existed.
Now, George, those variables, that's part of this operation that
Correct.
You have called with run operation, but you can't see them from here. And this is the huge value point in this, is that you run operation, but you may not know what all exists in that operation. And so this gives you that ability to see it in debug mode, which I mean, honestly, yeah, we cover it, but it's one of those things that it slips people's minds and they forget that it's there, this debug mode.
Same with me.
And it's very, very, very powerful. You can, if you're debugging, if you go back to that, there you go. So these values, just one other little tip and trick I'll toss in here. If you're going through a debug and you run that and you go, oh, well, but what if that value was 100? You can edit it right there as well before you run the next step.
And so you can the only way to create, if you are in a Jitterbit site and you're kind of the kingpin there, and you're creating reusable objects and stuff that other people will reuse, this is where you test it to the nth degree. This is where you can create your robust solutions. And you know, it's not a criticism of any low-code tool to do this. It's one of the bastions, one of the pillars of a low-code tool is the debugging at runtime. And so we're seeing it at runtime. So, you know, when I found it, it was an eye-opener. Let's put it that way. And so those Jitterbit variables will differ if you call, I don't know, a REST HTTP endpoint or a database endpoint. You'll see these lovely little flags and the inner workings, which allows you then to learn how things are working within your operation. And importantly, one operation at a time, because you are doing things one at a time. If you run this one under debug, when it would come here, you'd have the culmination of this one and this one, which you might want that. But normally you want it one by one to see it grow. An ETL, get data. Good, I've got the data I want. Transform it. It's transformed the way I want it. Upsert it. So you break things up into its meaningful parts. So this allows you to have from the top, to allow you to control it, marshal it, orchestrate it. So here, as we go a bit longer, I've added a bit more error handling, a bit more graceful error handling. It's saying, okay, let's run it. If it's successful, I want to see it go in there. If it's not, raise an error. I never knew about this until I did it on analyst mode, this get last error. So it's another way of good, a subtle way of introducing you best practice, new functionality. You know, keep the wizards on. Let's run that. There we go. Stepping through, nice control manage, run the operation. It's returned an error. But 200. So the web service said it was fine. It's because I put in an error message saying temperature response failed, sales sys returned as error. So that's a bug that people come and get. You know, that's something that could have caught you out. Is going, hang on, but it was a 200. So this is the only way that gives you visibility. So if we finally do the final one, here we go. 60. How are we doing for time, Corey?
I think we're doing good. We've got about 5 minutes of content, and then for the audience, if you've got questions that are coming to mind, go ahead and be submitting those over, because one of the things we do here on the Tech Talks is that we stay on as long as you have questions. And so far, that's not bit us. But we always say we're here as long as you got questions. So we've got George on, we've got myself and Jared. So if you guys have questions, it's a great avenue for that. But yeah, we've got probably about another 5 minutes or so that we can dive through content. But then we do want to have that Q&A time. We find that the audience very much appreciates that.
So if I run my screens back in focus.
Yes.
We've stepped through this now, the final iteration. We've set the value so you can see the value. This, if we ran this from other operations and they were set previously, you'd see the values in here. This is like kind of like a work where your values are. So before this break, you see the values. We set a ton before. Like that was a bit unclear. Let's just do it twice. You can go create another one. Not the best of practice. Stop your debug midway. Starts again. There we go. There, 2. So this gives you great visibility. run your operation. It's gone into the where I wanted it to do and expected it to do, because it's got a value back, Fahrenheit 86. That was in the response where we were just setting, if it comes back as error, raise an error, that was our error, else set it equal to the Fahrenheit, the result. So it's all about trying to create for the worst case scenario. I did this, for example, in SOAP UI, which is one of the tips, is please try and explore, discover endpoints in a dedicated tool such as SOAP UI or Postman, if there's no connector or whatever, so that you can learn what error looks like. And so I actually did that in this case. I learned, okay, I really do want Fahrenheit to come back, but what keeps me up at night, and I'm woken up at night by my boss to say, why is something wrong, is this. So this is really important to code for. So I learned how to break it and then code for it, how to model it in my low-code tool. So that's what I did here. I bubbled the error back from this operation. Bubbling allows me here that I get the last error, that's the bubble, then I raise it again. So you're bubbling it all the way back. So this can then now be in your own script operation. I've learned it in ScriptPad. I've found it bulletproof. Go back to ScriptPad. Probably running out of time, so we're just going to run this now. Copy. Only need that one. End. Thank you, ScriptPad. Invaluable as usual. Let's go into our new operation, the script operation to start everything. There we go. Create a new one. Obviously, I wouldn't use any of these naming conventions. Now we've got it. Now we can run it. We should get success because we supplied the parameter, the value in, cool. And there we go. So I learned it in ScriptPad, I learned it in SOAP UI first, and I modeled it. And that's just the start of how it's easy to have something controlled. So it can grow into this. So this is two controllers. This is the main polling of Harmony API. And if this interests you, I'm going to release a blog on this soon. Please contact me if you want this as an example. This is how to poll platform API, our own API to go get API errors. And it calls the controller for this lovely service, which is a request, a put, a response. So it all chains up nicely together. But we stress, on success path is not bad practice. It's just horses for courses. I think that will do. I think we could move to questions.
Okay. Well, we do have some questions coming in. So let's just start at the top here. Jared, you don't have the questions up there, so we'll go off of this one. So here's one that came in asking about really coming back to the ScriptPad that you brought up there, George. And it's really asking more about our documentation. Are the function keys like F4 referenced somewhere in documentation? I don't know of a particular page in Success Central right now that lists out F1, F2, F3, F4, et cetera, et cetera. But if you go into the studio, it is in the studio. If you go into the studio and you click on View, for instance, one of the options under View is ScriptPad, and it says right there F4. So one concise place that says, hey, what are all the shortcuts? I don't know of one offhand. We'll look. If we find one, we'll let you know. But it is there. If you look through your menu options, they are listed there. Some other things that you may find interesting, just talking about tips and tricks in the studio, because another question was about something that wasn't known. If you go under, I believe it is, let's see here, it's under Edit. This is in the Jitterbit Design Studio, under Edit and Preferences. And I don't have my screen hooked up, so I'm not able to show this right now. But if you, here, so George has got this pulled up. If you want to switch over to that, Micah. So here we go. If you go to Edit and Preferences, you get into this area. And so, for instance, under General and UI, there is things where you can change the look and feel. You can change the display mode. animations, just different little things like this. But let's see, where's some of the other ones that I believe it's under operations and graph. This is one that a lot of people have some preference on as far as the edge type, how the connecting lines, the success lines, the scripting call lines, things like that, whether they're 90-degree angles or straight lines. Some people just really like the difference there. And George is demonstrating that on screen here. So there's all kinds of little things here in the studio preferences that you may want to explore at some point as well. So there's that. Let's see what else we have. Okay, so again, talking about documentation, Success Central, success.jitterbit.com. Is there anything out there that explains the order of execution or the path when combining on error, on success, and run operation? I don't know. Jared, have you seen anything out there specifically that goes into that? I mean, I can highlight it.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't know of anything specific other than, just like it mentions there, checking out Success Central and kind of seeing what's out there.
Yeah. I will say the basics of it is that an on success path is always going to happen when an operation completes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On failure is, again, going to be when the operation completes. Both of those are going to be upon operation completion and whether or not that operation returns success or failure. Now, warning is considered success. It's success with warning is technically what that means. So either a full success or a success with warning will trigger the success chained operation. On failure will simply be triggered on the failure of the operation. When you get to the scripting side and the run operation, this is where you get the complete flexibility that George is talking about, because you can decide in your script when and if that operation runs. And there's two modes there. You can either set that to true or false. True means it's going to run synchronously, which means essentially we're going to pause the parent operation over here. We're going to go run the run operation. Once that completes and returns success or failure, then we're going to come back and pick up and go on. On the other hand, if you set that to false, that will be an asynchronous mode, which simply means we're going to take that operation, we're going to throw it into the queue, and we're going to continue. Okay, so that's the basics of it there. We'll take that as a point. Go ahead, George.
I'd like to add one, if my screen is in focus.
Yeah, let's bring George's screen back up here.
I'm showing the part 2 of the 6th trick. There's a very useful setting called schedule policy. Skip execution if previously scheduled operation is still running. It's something not real time, but batch. If you're doing batch processing, you've got a great operation that you only want to run, you don't want 2 running at the same time. When you add a schedule, thank you very much, it's added. By default, I think this came in 8.2, but the policy will skip if this operation here is still running, don't run another one. That's very useful for a tool to do that, i.e. will stop you having racing conditions. But if you have it on like this example here, if you can see it, is on and on success, when that first one runs and on success goes to the second one, the first one is considered out of memory and run. So when the policy says, am I still running? Technically, it is not. Its child is running. But 9 times out of 10, most people would consider and want that not to run another operation.
And so this is where your controller operation can really come into play. Because if you have a controller operation that's triggering off all of your child operations, so you've got 6, just for the sake of a number, you've got your controller, it's technically still running as long as you're running these synchronously, while those other 6 are running. So if your controller's set on that schedule, you don't have to worry about the fact that, oh, operation number 6 is still out there waiting, and I shouldn't trigger off that first operation again. But that's the default policy. That's the way that works, because we go by the operation. Sure. And so that controller script gives you that flexibility to bring that element in.
I like the analogy of it marshalling, a marshal in the army. It's controlling its minions, as it were, but always the focus returns back to it, so it can then decide what's the next course of action. And so that's what graceful error handling is. And if my screen is still showing, it's another term. It's quite technical, but it's interesting for us to know. We're a low-code solution, but underneath, we are software engineers, is tight coupling. It means if you see this example of the request and the response of the two with the on success path, if I want to call just the request, but not the response, so I want to reuse it, there's no way of stopping that. It will always call the on success, but in some situations, I might not want it to be run. So if you design it with a script to the front, that helps you with reuse. Bits become, in our final one, bits become more like Duplo. You're building blocks, you're creating blocks, and this was what Corey was talking about when we talked about designing around endpoints. Now, for an endpoint, you always, for example, Salesforce, go get account. Well, you only ever need one go get account. So maybe think of not creating many versions of that, just one that's flexible, that can be called in many situations, so you only have to maintain it once, one place. And therefore thinking of things as Duplo, as Lego, as composable objects that you make up your flows. So you're designing around the endpoint instead of making your one wonderful integration work perfectly for the first iteration. Think of maybe of the future going, I want to get reuse out of it. But it doesn't mean what you've done is wrong. It just means this is another idea, another method of maybe maturing as a Jitterbit site.
Okay. One other thing I'll mention real quick that came up in one of the questions. The question was around how those flows are controlled and things like that. One thing that I will say in that we do have another function that's wait for operation. And so if you are doing more of the success chain, yes, you can use the wait for operation to make sure that that particular operation that you're looking for has completed. If you use the controller script approach, it's not as necessary unless you're throwing things off into the queue for asynchronous work. And we could take an entire tech talk and dive into that, yeah. I know. But I did want to mention that. A couple questions we'll knock out real quick here. A question about the PowerPoint slide, George, that you put together. We're going to put that out on the Tech Talk page where the recording is going to be on Success Central. So I think Mike has actually got a screenshot of our Success Central landing page. Here it is. This is what you're looking for. If you just go out to Success Central and search for Tech Talks, this is where you should end up. And on the right side, you see there the pages in this topic, and that's all the individual Tech Talks. So we'll have one for this Tech Talk, and we're going to put the, I'm saying this actually without talking to our documentation people. So I hope that this is accurate, but we're going to try our best to put the PowerPoint out here. And George, I didn't talk to you about this before, but the little jitter pack that you had with the basic examples, is that something we could share out there as well?
Yes, always.
Okay.
When we do examples, we try to create a jitter pack, because the jitter pack says 1,000 words. It's much easier for our guys to see it in action. I just thought of one very good, something that I'd missed, is normally you go get records, ETL, get records, and then what happens if you don't have any records? But on the on success, you sometimes get that error message saying global variable or file empty. This, you have more control. So in my example here, I always have a counter before it. I initialize a little counter, say counter 0. And inside the transformation for the response, I work out if there were any records. So I iterate, I just add to the counter. Now for our great Salesforce connector, that's done for us, but for other endpoints that we're not familiar with, we have to use a counter. But when we're in the script, because we've set a counter in here, I can go, if there's any records, do something. So I don't need to run operations and get those messages that say, there was no errors, there was no records in the global variable. So that's one of the big uses is ETL. Get the data. You can now reuse that in other operations. And the second for the transformation is, do I want to continue? Well, were there any records? So that's another example, just giving you more control if you are that way, if you need more control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that really is a great point, because that is another question that has come up to me oftentimes is, hey, I'm looking at my operation log and my operation shows successful, and so it triggers off the rest of the operation chain, but there were no records. It's like, well, but it made technically it made the call properly and it returned, but there was nothing in the return. But as far as Jitterbit's concerned, it is a success, and so it does trigger that success operation flow. So this is just another area where a little more complexity can be handled with this particular approach that we're diving into. So another question here, what about other features such as the business analyst option that some of our people may have never seen before? Is this documented somewhere? Well, it is out there on Success Central. For instance, that one, you would have to go out to the Success Central Formula Builder page and look through the Formula Builder features. As far as a kind of a quick start guide, I don't know of anything like that right now, but it's a great point, and it's a point well taken. And so we'll pass that info along, and maybe it will help us to produce something a little bit better for you. So always like having that feedback. One more here, just are we going to send out the link to the webinar? We won't necessarily send out a link to the recording, but it will be there on Success Central. Typically takes us, what is it, 24
to 48 hours.
Yeah. So a day or two, it'll be out there. You can go back and reference this recording and all the previous ones. One other question, and keep the questions coming. If you have any other questions, send them over. But one other here, can we use the debugging and breakpoints for arrays? I'll mention briefly here, and then George, if you've got some commentary to add, we'll bring that in as well. But if the array is in a variable, because variables can be arrays, yes, it will show up there. It will show up in a particular text syntax with, I believe it's a kind of a curly brace starting the array, and then the array elements separated by commas, something along those lines. George, do you have any other commentary on that?
I could mock it up, but yes, it puts a square brackets. You see it as text, but then you have to manipulate it as an array. Yeah. So you will see it in the debug.
Okay. So yes, it can be something to be a little interesting to go out there and model up sometime and take a look at it. Well, I don't have any other. Go ahead. Oh, ScriptPad.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. ScriptPad F4 is the easy way to get to it. You can get to it through the file menu as well. But as I'm waiting for any other potential questions to come in, because I do want to give you a few more moments for that. We've got some time. We're going to stay here as long as there's any questions. But I want to take this moment to also mention something else that's going to be kind of coming down the pipe. And this is an early access program that we're going to open up for some of our existing customers and partners. We're looking for a few of you that might be interested in checking out a great new feature that we're working on, but we want to make sure to get your input. It's one thing for us to sit there and try to design a product feature, a major product feature around what we think it should be. We want to know what you think it should be. So we're looking for what, 15 or so people?
I believe that's right. Yep, 15.
So about 15 or so people that might be willing to commit. What is the commitment that we're looking at?
It's just a few hours, I believe.
Yeah, so just like 3-4 hours
maybe, yep,
over the course of a few months, just to dive in and take a look. And what we're talking about is a cloud version of our design studio. So the Jitterbit Cloud Studio. And so what I'm going to do, and this is not a committal at this point, but if you're interested, Mike, have we got that where we can bring that information up on screen? Did we get that in? No? Okay, that's fine. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put a little poll question out real quick, but you can also email. What's the email that they should send to? Do we have that?
We can. Well, I know they can definitely reach out to us, and we could probably.
So yeah, we can pass that along. Apologies on that. I may actually be able to find it here very quickly. Early access at jitterbit.com.
Okay.
Early access at jitterbit.com. But I'm going to very quickly also, if I can bring my my questions back up. Here we go. There it is. Always fun when the control panel disappears on you. But I'm going to put a poll question out real quick. If you would have interest in joining our pool of potential test users for this Cloud Studio Early Access program, you can put it there, and I'll pass that along. It doesn't mean, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to bring everybody in that has interest, because we expect there's going to be a lot of people interested. Sure. We're looking for about 15 is what we can handle right now. But if you're interested, I'm going to pass that along. If you're not, no problem whatsoever. We just want to know. I know some people have the time to dive into the future, and some you're caught up in other things. We get that. So while that is going on, it looks like we may have one other question that has come in. Let's see here. Can the two separate login screens for the studio, you got one login for the username, one for the password, can that be combined into one login screen requiring only one click? It used to be that way, but for security reasons, that was pulled back into the two separate login screens. So I don't imagine that coming back to one, but we can definitely pass that along to product that is an interest point. But I do believe that was done very specific. I don't remember the exact security. Do you remember what that was?
I don't remember, but
that was it.
Yep.
Yeah, the two-factor authentication, that's what it is. So yeah, there was a requirement there that we did that. So that's why that is separate like that. Okay, well, I'm going to leave the poll up here for just another moment, but any other questions that you guys have? Jared, did we cover all of the little announcements? I know we try not to pack too many of those in. But
yeah, most of the little announcements we have. I think we may have, Mike, one more slide you can put up in regards to just, steps going forward in your learning journey. But we obviously have the ability for you guys to go and check out Jitterbit University for all your learning needs. Right now we have 4 courses and 2 certifications available. We're constantly working to build out some more courses. So that stuff's in the work, and you may see that soon through maybe your customer representative or partner.
Next Tech Talk we may have.
Or maybe next Tech Talk. Yeah. So
maybe a time frame idea.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're interested in getting into Jitterbit University, reach out to one of those people, and they will definitely assist you with that. Success Central there on screen as well. Great documentation. Location that our team has put forth. And a lot of questions today, I shouldn't say a lot, but a few anyways, have been product related. Hey, I would like to see this, or I would like to see that. Well, we have the Jitterbit community, which is a great outlet for that. Basically, just visit community.jitterbit.com.
And in there, we have the idea portal, right?
That's right, the idea portal, where you can literally give your idea, put it out into the atmosphere, and let other people vote on that. And the thought process there is that if it's a really solid idea that a lot of people, maybe it affects a lot of their workflows from day to day, it may eventually become a feature in the product. So a lot of great outlets there to either continue learning or voice your opinion through the community.
Yeah. Another question just came in here, and we do always appreciate the questions, because it helps us to tailor the conversation to what you're looking for. And this was around, do we have any upcoming features coming out supporting multiple people working on projects simultaneously? Unfortunately, I don't get that deep into the product roadmap myself, but I have heard some chatter from time to time on that. So I know it's something that's had some discussion, but I don't know the specifics on that. But I'll tell you, that idea portal, that's the perfect place. Go out there, put that into the idea portal, and that lets the product team know specifically what you guys are asking for, because you went out there and you asked for it. So yeah, put that out there. Well, guys, I'm going to end the polling here, and looks like we had several that expressed interest in that early access program. So I'm going to pass that information along, and somebody will probably be reaching out to you on that to discuss that. But I don't see any other questions. So I want to say, George, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I had a great time.
Absolutely. So, guys, if you've got questions for us after this, you can always reach our team, training@jitterbit.com. If you've got questions going through Jitterbit University, training@jitterbit.com. Now, if it is more product related, support related, you've always got support@jitterbit.com. If it comes to us, we're just going to redirect you over there on those because they're more equipped to handle it. We want to get you the best answer. But with that, everybody, thank you for coming out to our Tech Talk.
Yeah, thanks again for doing this and joining us. And more than likely, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, and George, thanks again for being with us.
Thanks, man.
Have a great day, everybody.